Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Future of XYZ. Super excited to be joined by my friend Charles Johnson. Charles, thanks so much for joining us on Future of XYZ today.
Thank you, Lisa. It's cool to be talking to you in the same time zone again.
I know, I know. Well, the last time we were in a 6-hour difference of time zone, but still the same one, and now we're here. Um, Charles, you are going to be talking about the future of shoes. The
hmm
reason, of course, being that for the better part of 4 decades, you've been at the forefront of kind of what you call where the human body meets the pavement. You ended your so-called in-house design professional career after 11 years at Puma, where you
That's right.
ended as the global innovation, global innovation director is the
Global
title.
direct, yeah, global director of innovation, not just footwear, apparel, all kinds of things. Yep.
And you had been in like head of innovation design, head of footwear innovation. And obviously prior to that, you'd been at Crocs and Adidas and Converse and worked in with all sorts of other brands over the years. You're currently an assistant teaching professor at Carnegie Mellon University, where you also went to school.
Yes, indeed.
In Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. You run a consulting firm called Driven by Charles, which really is in this space as well. And we'll talk also about where you're the creative director at the World Shoe in a little bit, which I want to talk about. But really, we're talking about your research and your work kind of coming together in robotics, footwear, education, healthcare, like kind of this convergence. So shoes are more than what I think most of our listeners are going to be thinking about.
Yeah, I hope I get the recording because that was a great promo reel, I have to say, what you just described. But yeah, it's interesting. I'm out of the industry traditionally, so that means I was in the industry for 3 decades, as you said. I'm now in academia. I recently gave a presentation for my reappointment, and part of the theme was once a footwear designer, always a footwear designer. Like even though I'm out, I'm still connected to it through some of the research I'm doing. And also, Lisa, when you teed up like the future of shoes, you have to know you're talking to a person who's like, I've called it footwear for decades. It's like
I
that's
know.
the industry technical term, but everyone talks about it as a shoe. So yeah. But I could go on. Shoes is a big topic. For
Well,
me,
why don't we start there? Because shoes is actually, that's always the first question, which is like in the context of your expertise and today's conversation, how do we define shoes?
That's a good one. I mean, alongside that, it's a journey, right? For me, it's been a journey, footwear. So, and I'll talk about that a little bit, but maybe just to start out, I came across an image of the oldest shoe found, which was circa 3,500 BC, so about 5,000 years ago, right? And I think it's at the Batter Shoe Museum, and it's essentially like a swath of leather that you can see sort of was wrapped around the foot with some twine sort of holding it to the foot. And because it wasn't particularly patterned for the foot, it sort of had some irregular holes in it, that were sort of exposed what was behind. And I saw this image, it's a tan color. And I saw this image and I was reminded of a shoe that we're seeing a whole lot of, by my measure, too much, a foam molded shoe today. It's laceless, and all kinds of
You're
kids
talking
are
about
wearing.
like a croc type situation, like a clog.
Exactly, exactly. And
Hmm.
they looked so similar, right? Tan, imperfect, this Crocs like shoe, it's not a Crocs, had these sort of holes in it. And I was looking at this and like in 5,000 years, like this is where we've come, right? Like one of the
Yeah.
most popular shoes on the planet is this injection molded EVA foam with no laces. Arguably, that shoe from 5,000 years ago is a better shoe, right? So that's,
Certainly for the planet.
well, exactly, yeah. So there's a little bit of cynicism in that analysis, but I'll try and get past that. Um, but yeah, I mean, the idea that like shoes they aren't what they sort of were once upon a
But
time,
you said it well. They are footwear, meaning that they are wearables for one's feet.
right?
So that's kind of like why you call them. I'm not sure where the word shoes or zapatos or, chaussure or whatever it came from, but shoes are footwear.
Yeah, well, and it could be like, and that's actually interesting the way. So I emerged, or I had a degree in industrial design. My first job happened to be in footwear. Didn't set out to be a footwear designer. I thought I was going to go to Silicon Valley and design computer housings. I came from Carnegie Mellon, right? Was hired as a footwear designer. And it was at a time when that was quite new, bringing in trained industrial designers into the footwear or the
Interesting.
sports industry, let's say. And so maybe sort of it was a way of like standardizing, making it more official. What we do is footwear, not shoes.
Mm.
That could be part of it. But getting back to like the sort of the history of footwear, I've put together, as you can imagine, sort of a timeline of innovation over the span of like the modern footwear industry, right? And
Well,
on
I
one
mean,
end,
I just have to
yeah,
say, because what you've just described is like the oldest shoe 5,000 years ago to the most popular shoe today. There's basically zero evolution except in the materiality and the scale, is what I'm hearing you say. So I can't wait to hear this timeline and like, how have we evolved?
well, so now we get to like the modern sports era. So let's maybe compartmentalize like shoes that need to protect your feet in the modern world and shoes that need to do something in particular. And in my world, it was athletes. Okay. And when that started, sort of in the 1800s, when we started to think, not we, I wasn't there, but started to think, okay, what do shoes need to do on the golf course or on the soccer pitch? And this timeline, I have on one side, like the shoe that was around the modern Olympics, and it looks like a brown dress shoe with
Mm.
nails stuck through the outsole.
Oh,
Like that
for
was
like
a sport.
cleats.
Yeah, but it was like on a shoe, on a dress shoe. Like the only
Yeah.
difference between like it being on the street with a suit was like these nails are stuck through it, right? So that was all we could figure out how to do. And it was largely, and so then on the other end of the spectrum, we have like Air Jordan technology emerging, being pumped into shoes. We have, chips in shoes, and we have on the far end of the spectrum are these shoes that have giant, foam midsoles,
Yeah.
right? And everything in between, right? Like I have a shoe on my shelf, which is the RS computer shoe, right? And it was done in the 80s, and Puma put a computer in a shoe. That was the first time that was done. That was 1986,
Yeah.
right?
You have
So
lots of cool shoes back there.
we've like I said, I can't stay away. I mean, we've dabbled, we've done a lot of different things within this span of what we'd call the modern sports industry. But again, like here we are today, where it's like fat foam shoes and Crocs like shoes. How far have we really gotten? Do you know what I
Well, and
mean?
why do we wear shoes in the first place? I mean, like, let's just like start there. Like, why? I mean, because to be honest, I mean, it's something like 12% of the world's population today, like close to a billion people and 300 million children don't actually, they call them unshod, right? Like, they don't have access to shoes or they choose not to wear them in some cases. Like, why do we even bother?
That's a really good. I mean, it's the numbers. 600 million people in the world are shoeless, right?
Hmm.
And that's something that, you and I can't entirely relate to, right? Why don't you have shoes? Well, the when the rubber hits the road, so to speak, that's a different world. When you're not wearing shoes in some parts of the world, it's a slow road to poverty, right?
Hmm.
Why? Because you're susceptible to disease. And when you have disease, you can't stay in school. And when you can't stay in school, you don't have the right trajectory to working. So that's for sort of the first, line of defense is like health and protection, right?
Interesting.
And that's very real for a lot of people. And that's something I'm very intimately connected to. Yeah, for
Interesting.
sure.
And so what fueled your, I mean, you said like you thought you were going to go make like computer casings in the Silicon Valley coming out of Carnegie Mellon, which is, for anyone not familiar, is one of the top tech schools in the whole world, certainly in the United States, and studying industrial design in a computer forefronted school, I can imagine. But like what fueled that initial passion for shoes?
Some of it might be fortuitous on some level, like since you brought up Carnegie Mellon, when we were in this uh, uh, our studio program in senior year, we had a collaboration with the Robotics Institute, and the brief was connect industrial design and healthcare, or robots and healthcare. And I designed a foot therapy device. Like
Mm.
I don't know why I gravitated towards that, but I did. Okay. Um, but before that, I was always into sports. Like I'm what I would call a generalist. I did a lot of sports, pretty good. Didn't excel at one. And I'm talking from like swim team to ski team to lacrosse and everything in between. I did. So I always
And
had
I've
sort of
seen
a
you on a bike a number of times. So
that, yeah, that too. That's where that, and I was all about like, I was very interested in equipment and gear and stuff. I wasn't one who, because I did all these sports, I was intimate with, my lacrosse stick and my gloves and my shoes. My first cleats they were called Juice Mobiles. They were OJ Simpson cleats.
oh no.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, so I was always, and so I actually, when I took this job, it was Saucony was the brand. I didn't even really know it was going to be footwear. He talked about they had skateboards as part of their product mix, but really the skateboards were just they took a deck and licensed properties and put stickers on them or
Hmm.
whatever, right? But sure enough, I was a footwear designer, and I came in at a really interesting time because then it was still an artisan. If I were to simplify it, an artisan effort, meaning footwear designers were people who knew how to cut patterns. They knew materials.
Yep.
They knew how to cut patterns. Um, they knew how to sort of uh, what was important was aesthetics, but not aesthetics in terms of how the shoe formed to the foot. And
Yeah.
if it formed
Just
to the
how it
foot
looked.
well, if it formed to the foot well, then it was going to be comfortable, and if the materials were right, and all of that. So typically, then a footwear designer worked with a pattern designer.
Yeah.
So now, this was a time when industrial designers started to be hired in the industry because that wasn't the case until then.
Well,
Why? Because we knew materials,
and
we knew
shoemaking was
engineering.
traditionally a very handcraft also.
Exactly. So now when you start to industrialize it, you need the mind of an industrial designer to start to shape product.
It's totally fascinating. I mean, we've spent lots of time with our friend Karen Reuter, formerly of Nike and Reebok, geeking out. I spent a good amount of time in both the fashion and footwear industries as well. And I will say that in all of my career of industry hopping, I have never dealt with a more complex product than shoes. And I was blown away by how complex they were when I came in as a change agent at Adidas. But I
Mhm.
remain blown away when people tell me, oh, my shoes hurt or this happened. And you're like, shoes do not have to be a pain point, right? They should be beneficial to your well being. But to get to that place requires them to be well made. What like if just like as briefly as possible, Charles, for people listening, I'd love you to talk about kind of like what the process is, the design development process, if you will, production process for shoes. I
Yeah,
know it's
really.
like not brief, but
Yeah,
like less than a
yeah.
minute.
Well, maybe we'll start in the back end, which does say something that on average, and I'm talking about a traditional shoe made with different components. On average, 100 pair of hands touch the shoe through the production process. Okay, 100 pair of hands. So that says something about all of the steps. It's and I'm just talking about manufacturing. It's material cutting, it's stitching, it's cementing, it's the pattern cutting, it's um, you know,
Lacing, grommeting.
lacing on the grommets, heat tunnels, pressing machines, right? So an understanding of it is a complex process. What's interesting is I did a project to create the lightest driver shoe for Formula One drivers at Puma, right? It was the first thing we did because weight means everything, right? Something like zero point 0.9 grams means a second, or 0.9, 0.001 seconds, right? So we were motivated to reduce the shoe. So the first thing we did was like deconstruct a typical shoe. And when you see the pattern laid out of a shoe, it's art, right? It's a lot of pieces.
Yeah.
Okay, so typically, on the other end of the spectrum, when you ask about footwear creation, I had somebody reach out to me and say, "Hey, Charles, I see what you're doing in the industry. I have this idea for a shoe brand. Would you help me out?" I said, "Fine, send me a tech pack." So I understand, or just send me more about what you're thinking about. And so I got a AI generated rendering, and the shoe was exploded, and it was not at all realistic at all. The
There was no
components
tech
coming
pack because
together.
they wouldn't have a clue how to make it.
They would exactly. So that's the point. And you know, yes, there is sort of an aesthetic, expressive aspect to footwear design. I want it to look fast, and so these lines go this way, or I want it to look comfortable, so it's more organic. But at the end of the day, they have to be made into something, sounds obvious. And that is sort of, there's a science behind it, right? For
Yeah,
sure.
there's a
It's
lot of
complex.
research and fit because everyone's foot is different, but you have to buy it in a store if it's not custom. And an eight is an eight is an eight, basically, but of course it's not. So
Yeah. Yeah. Well, here's another thing with 3D printed shoes, right? The promise of 3D printed shoes is it can be customized and you press go and it prints out. But and it's, it's evolving, but a shoe has a lot of different material and performance capabilities. Now things are advancing, right? If you can imagine, a molded shoe actually has aspects to it that are like textile
yeah.
that's printed. Wow.
Well,
That's
that's
pretty
I know that there's lots of this where you can start printing the shoe and throwing it back in, and almost 100% of the material is re-yielded into another shoe, et cetera. There's lots of people trying
well.
to figure this out.
Yes, and also on this, you asked about complexity, so and you just brought up like sustainability, right? So that's a theme that's been in the industry, for decades now. It's hard to get at, right?
Yeah, I mean
For a
EV
lot
foam
of
most notably,
yes, yeah. The chemicals, the cements, all these things. So
the
even if you're
leather.
the leather, right? So if you're as all global brands, everyone is like, how are we going to be sustainable? And then we're stuck with this supply chain that is not conducive. I don't want that to be an excuse, but that is a certain reality. So there's something that a brand that emerged, and I don't want this to sound as a plug, but it's really they went at it from ground zero, meaning this is somebody who knows all about footwear design, footwear product development. They've been in the industry for decades, and they set out to design or to put on the market a sustainable shoe. And the latest evolution is he's built a factory. Why? Because that factory now is not contaminated. He can rely on every aspect of what's coming into his factory because out in the wide world, you use a supplier here, a supplier there, it's contaminated somehow by some chemical or something that's not going to be
Totally.
good for the environment.
And
So that
even
also
and you
speaks,
have tier 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 suppliers who in fact you can't control, especially in the footwear industry where a lot of your production and manufacturing is in developing nations, and again 100 hands have touched it and you don't know who those hands are either, and the labor and
exactly. And that because I've been around, I've seen things in the footwear industry and I saw this brand, it was submitted to the IF Design Award and my I had to I wasn't in charge of jurying it because it was in a different category, but it was an award winner. The Sulk Fade 101 is the collection. Like thumbs up, like this is real. So
we
yeah,
might use that as the image. In full disclosure to everyone watching and listening, Charles is a longtime IF Design Award jury member. He's a group lead in the sports product design category, and this was one of his wild cards this year. The Sulk Fade 101, and it's quite exceptional.
yeah, it's competent. Again, it's like they stepped back and started from zero and got to building a factory. Yeah.
It's amazing. You're specialized, Charles, kind of in this optimization of the interface between, I would say, human performance and the environment more broadly. Like, what does that kind of optimization mean?
Hmm. I think
And or moreover, what makes it possible?
would rephrase that if you
Well,
would.
like, how do you optimize human performance in the environment, like through shoes?
And human performance and the environment.
Yeah.
Ooh. Um, that's a difficult question to answer. Um,
I think the point that I was trying to get at is like this incredible intersection of your career is like innovation and human-centered design, which is about like performance and the environment, like performance in certain environments, not in terms of sustainability,
yeah.
plus sports and fashion. Like these seem like incongruous pieces, but like there's a secret to success. What is it?
It's always being authentic. So I'm sort of a nerd, meaning like if I approach a problem, I want to know everything. and I need to do the research. And that actually came to being when I started at Puma, was as head of footwear design. I had pretty much designed almost a shoe for every category except football, soccer. And so wasn't going to make any assumptions. And we started from zero and got into the lab and learned about how the foot needs to perform in football and designed a shoe based on that research. Okay. So I'm really tuned into research first. What's the science behind how the body moves, in what scenario, um, and go from there, right? Now, there's a couple of there's a couple of directions this conversation can go. One is the work I'm doing now in healthcare, which is using smart shoes to actually, for Parkinson's patients,
Wow.
to actually, there's a shoe actually here on this rack, which is, it's a smart shoe. It has all manner of sensors, but it also has a haptic motor. And that haptic motor sends signals to the brain and breaks the freeze that Parkinson's patients
Yeah.
have. So now they can suddenly walk normally.
Wow.
And my students here at the ETC did
What's ETC?
The Entertainment Technology Center at Carnegie Mellon, where the ETC is a master's degree program that puts together technical people and creative people together to solve problems. Okay.
Oh.
And so that's, we are celebrating our 25th year right now. And with that sort of as the ethos, technical people and creative people coming together to collaborate. 25 years ago, that was quite novel.
Yeah.
And we have a very unique curriculum. We do a lot of, where the physical world meets the digital world. And this is what gets to this footwear that my students created, an exergame for therapy for Parkinson's disease. I mention that because here is, footwear, technology, science coming together to deliver something very real and useful and helpful for people in the world. On the other end of the spectrum, you probably know that humanoid robots, we've seen a lot of humanoid robots in the world, right?
Lots.
Right? Yeah. And, we're kind of, the jury's still out, we're stumbling through it, but I can't help myself. We have a humanoid robot here at the ETC. We have a lot of humanoid robots at Carnegie Mellon, but we have a humanoid robot here at the ETC. Why? Because robots are being used for entertainment. Sports is entertainment. They need to function like we're seeing humanoid robot athletes emerge. They have 2 feet. I'm a footwear designer, right?
Wow. You're talking about putting shoes onto robots?
Yes. I mean, we have one here and it's clomping down the hallway, right? So part one is like they're flat-footed and they're metal and they need better. But part two, right? Part two is, okay, what can we learn? Now, when we can potentially design better humanoid robot feet, not just shoes, right? Then as robot performance evolves and they start to outperform humans, which it's a long road before we get there, but that's happening in other spheres, right? Then those robots need even better footwear, or let's say feet and footwear. And what those humanoids can do now is test the performance edge, right, of what's possible for a humanoid structure, humanoid configuration. And that can help us develop product that can help humans find their performance edge, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So again, I can't help myself. I am going down.
You're basically reverse engineering for humans through the robots.
Exactly. That's exactly right. Now, that's on one end of the spectrum. And on the other end of the spectrum is the World Shoe, which is, again, I'm part of a social enterprise. Part one is putting shoes on the feet of people who don't have shoes to help fight disease, as you know. But it doesn't stop there, right? We've actually, in the interest of promoting prosperity, we've built a factory in Ghana to make those shoes that we give away. Those shoes it's an injection molded EVA shoe. It has a biodegradation accelerant. That means instead of 10 years, it takes 5 years to biodegrade. So that's really a roundabout way of answering your question.
I love it, but I want to talk about World Shoe though.
Yeah.
But let me let you finish your thought, because I want to come back to World Shoe.
Yeah, no, just that who would have thought again, like my my world is about human performance, humans performing, optimizing, making things, taking away ounces and, grams and, optimizing for production and all of that. And for humans, and now there's humanoid robots. But again, I can't help myself.
I mean,
Once
I
a
think
footwear designer, always a footwear designer.
it's pretty cool. You can take the boy out of the sports industry, but you can't take him out of footwear manufacturing. Um,
Right.
the World Shoe is super cool, and anyone can visit at worldshoe.com. So it's patent pending, very clog like, just coming back to like that original shoe and popular. Very durable, as you mentioned. First factory opened in Ghana, so it's produced locally, but the anticipation being that it will grow and there'll be more manufacturing at local levels,
Mhm,
including all over Africa.
mhm,
Um, my understanding, it's a combo of kind of four partners, which is like the global footwear brand called World Shoe, but then the World Shoe Limited, which is the manufacturing side, creating local jobs. Samaritan's Feet, which is this nonprofit health and humanitarian organization, and then the World Shoe Fund, which is this social enterprise really looking at like eradicating footborne diseases, which is a very unique model. Talk to us a little bit. I mean, in small time as everything on Future of
yeah,
XYZ, unfortunately, like what does this World Shoe have to do with the future shoes in terms of the business, the model, the mission, or just in general
yeah,
how it fits in?
yeah. I'll talk about that really quickly. How I got, why I'm even involved in it is I gave a talk around humanistic design, which is using the power of design to do good. Somebody in the audience was connected to Samaritan's Feet. Feet has been around for since 2003.
Yeah,
Okay.
everyone in the footwear industry knows it well.
Okay, nonprofit organization. And so that means their mission was putting shoes on the shoe list. And they came to me, we need a new shoe. I was entirely motivated to do so. What's interesting is I came from designing shoes that lace themselves, with a micro motor. You can control it with your app or your smartwatch. Nobody needs that shoe.
That's
Being
what I was
dramatic.
thinking.
Yeah. To a
Sorry.
shoe that people really need. So complex computer electronics, simple molded shoe. Okay, so I was drawn to it. But this Samaritan's Feet still exists. They're by and large the nonprofit that distributes shoes.
Mhm.
Okay, the social enterprise that emerged was, as you mentioned, World Shoe Inc., which is the commercial enterprise. So portion of our sales go to World Shoe Fund, which is a distributor of shoes, but more on a, let's say, a government level, or health ministry level.
Yeah.
They also do on the ground distributions. And then, as you mentioned, World Tour Limited is the factory. Um, it's just this incredible ecosystem. It's like, here again, like the shoe is a flywheel for all kinds of innovation, and then I brought that into academia where my students created a transformational game which teaches young people good hygiene and the importance of wearing shoes. Now we can bring that alongside a distribution, to help educate people. So, um, it's this ecosystem that I'm completely passionate about. We continue to grow, not as quickly as we'd like to, or let's say not as much volume as we'd like, but we're getting there. Um,
Cool.
and to me, that is part of the future of footwear for sure.
So we're coming on time. So before I jump into our last question, I want to do like a really like rapid round. And this
Yeah,
is like speaking of the future of shoes, maybe more superficially, Charles, than you like, but bear with me.
yeah.
Thinking about 2026, but really thinking like ahead the next, like, I don't know, 3 to 5 to 10 years. What are the emerging trends when we're thinking about like technologically within the footwear, within shoes?
So it's somewhat a continuation of the same. And what I mean is that sports shoes are now shoes. Everybody wears them. They're not only dedicated to sport. That's been around for a while. We called it athleisure, fashion collaborations. But now we are seeing, what I'm seeing is, picture a wingtip leather shoe on top of a marathon foam running shoe. Like
Mhm.
the extremes are coming together. And I see that continuing. That's on the one side. The other side is sadly, I've seen far too many people wearing, this is going to sound counter to what I just said, but there are people in the world who need shoes, and a simple foam molded shoe is the first line of attack, and that's good. But in the rest of the world, who really has access to much more, I see far too many people wearing just simple molded shoes. I don't know why, because they're fashionable and comfortable. But it would be interesting to do a morphology study on how that's affected, young people whose bodies are developing. I see again and not just walking around in the street, but doing sports. I'm being dramatic, but I see a lot of people, kids. I used to wear sneakers in the street. They're wearing these
Like,
shoes that have no support, no
yeah.
comfort, no durability. So the trend of like the extremes of leisure or let's say dress shoes and fashion coming together in much more of a literal sense. That's one trend that I see.
I love that. It answers the second part of the question, which is stylistically. So I'm going to leave it with that. The last thing before I get to the final question, is there something specific? I mean, you and I both come out of an era when brand loyalty, especially in footwear and especially in sports driven footwear, was not only contract based for the professional sports players, but like consumers as well. Do you see anything that's changing in terms of consumer brand loyalty or affinity today that is, shoe based?
Wow, there's a couple of things that I've seen in the past few 5 or so years, and that is when you talk brands, the worlds that we come from, the big ones, right? The big three, four or five, depending on who you're talking about, Nike, Adidas, Puma, Under Armour, etc. But there are some smaller brands that have emerged, right? Smaller once upon a time that, the big brands we were looking at and thinking like, good luck on
Yep.
running, good luck, Hoka. But guess what? They're now, I think, oh, Lululemon is making as much impact on the industry as Puma. Okay. So, and they started out a yoga type brand. They're
Yep.
doing footwear and so on. Okay. So, and that's going to speak to brand loyalty. The brand loyalty is now being dispersed, let's say, right? The big brands are going to be important, but there are other ones that are emerging. Okay. The other thing that's happening is I'm seeing, again, some of these small brands, uh, what there's a brand out of China called Anta, and I did some work, consulting work for them through an agency, and we were doing a high performance running shoe. Now, Anta, I was entirely impressed with. Once upon a time, China was a place you'd go, the big brands would go to manufacture shoes,
Only.
right? Only now they're quite competent to be being innovative and performance. Stitch for stitch, they do as well as any other brand.
Yep.
What they don't have, and I'm being generalizing, what they don't have is the same sports heritage.
Yep.
Okay. So what are you seeing? Anta just invested in Puma. Okay.
Right.
One of the oldest sports brands in the world. So I think you're seeing that's a number of different, responses to your question, but in terms of brand loyalty, there are a lot more options out there,
I love
right?
that. I mean,
That I
it's
see.
like in many industries, but shoes is a unique one.
Hmm.
Um, and then we have to wrap, which is unfortunate because this is one of my favorite topics, nonetheless. And I always love chatting with you, Charles.
I
Um,
could go on.
well, you're truly an expert in it, so I'm glad you're here talking about the future of shoes. When we think about kind of 25 years in the future, so let's call it generously 2050, which seems really far off, but it's actually not. What's your greatest hope for the future of shoes?
Well, for starters, as I've mentioned earlier, is that everyone has them, right? That's one future that I see or that I'd like to see because it's simply not a reality today. And it's one of these, solvable problems, right? That we haven't solved yet, but we're getting there.
Yeah.
So that's one. Um, and, you know, maybe the other view is not as uplifting on some level, but what I mean is, again, down this humanoid robot path, right? So if you follow the trail of performance and brands and athletes and heroes, because, also injected in this journey is not just what shoes do, but who wears them.
Mm.
Think, Air Jordan, right? Um, so what could emerge is humanoid robot heroes, right? And what product are they wearing? And can you go into Foot Locker and buy those products? Right? So
That's so cool.
call me crazy,
Oh
but
no, it's coming. That's just brand builder, marketers like dream.
yeah. So,
And
who's
you
going
don't
to
even
be
have to
the
pay the robot royalties. I mean,
right or
yeah.
the likeness,
I mean, maybe it's probably coming
image.
too.
Yeah, we'll see.
I'm gonna get
So
into that IP game.
you wouldn't, I think you'd be smart. You're
Totally.
not alone.
No, I'm sure not. I like that. It's not a cynical view. It's just reality. And I appreciate your sharing your deep expertise on the future of shoes, which is a huge topic, as we often try to tackle at Future of XYZ. So thanks for joining us, Charles.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for allowing me to nerd out, because I can do that when it comes to shoes.
Well, I love that about you. Everyone watching and listening, thank you so much for tuning in to this episode. You can watch, if you didn't know that, on YouTube, and you can listen anywhere you get your favorite podcasts. Please be sure to leave us a 5-star review, because that's how other people find it. Every other week is a new topic. So you can geek out to your heart's content with people like Charles, whether it's about shoes or human machine collaboration or third places or all sorts of other topics that those are just recent ones. So thank you again, Charles. We'll look forward to seeing you hopefully in Berlin for the IF Design Awards ceremony, where you've been a juror for a long time.
In yet another time zone.
And
We
yet
have this
another
way of
time
like
zone.
connecting in different time zones. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you so much for having me.